And let me now introduce our Chief Executive, Graham Cory. Graham.
Thank you very much indeed. Somebody asked yesterday who did that. That was a niece, and I had to pay her extra to add this bit in because I thought she'd rather up there self-professed. There we go. Who's this? Joseph.
Is he granddad?
My granddad, no. Who is it? Oh dear, oh dear. Oh dear. Well, look, here's the clue. This is Captain Smith, Captain of the Titanic, and this is probably the first conference of its sort to start with the story of the Titanic and perhaps to draw parallels between the British Horse Society and the Titanic. But there's a reason. What sank the Titanic? And it wasn't an iceberg. So what was it? Sorry, what was this? So design error. And somebody said, what was it?
Lack of coordination and leadership.
That's good. That's on the right. I mean, what I would say. Communications. I would say it's two things. Complacency and hubris. Complacency. This ship is unsinkable. It's the fastest. It's the best. Hubris. Arrogance and pride. Those were the two things. Without those, I suggest the Titanic would have hit the iceberg in the first place. And if you think about it, Captain Smith, in the moment before, the seconds before the Titanic hit the iceberg, just before he said, "What the hell was that?" He was probably one of the cheeriest people around. This was his last trip before retirement. He was in charge of the White Star Line's prized ship, and he was as happy as Larry. And then, because of the complacency and hubris of the White Star Line, well, you know what happened. Now, the British Horse Society has a lot of which it can be proud. Examinations, including riding road safety tests, campaigning, welfare, we'll hear about more of those later. 1,000 approved establishments, riding clubs, we'll hear from them later. Huge volunteer force. It's the force that's huge, not the volunteers necessarily. Traditional reputation, yes. What else? The values we espouse, of course. Continued growth, yes, even during hard times. Commercial success, without which we weren't able to do anything. Always strange interest. And our availability to plan. These things happen. But the risk is with all of those things, where the society become complacent and hubristic, and it is because we are determined to avoid those two things that we have done and are continuing to do so much work to make the British Horse Society relevant to members nowadays, and indeed tomorrow and next week and next year, not just to preserve in aspect what was set up in 1947, but you'll hear a lot about, especially from my colleague Emma Day a little later on, what we're doing to ensure that society keeps up to date and indeed anticipates development. But before then, a little bit of nostalgia for some of you, and to take less than 3 minutes. This is where people start saying, "Oh, we miss." Please, loved it. Who said that? That's still outside the front door, the sweet chestnut trees outside the front door. This is about February of last year, so just over a year ago. That was just when they wanted to start pouring the concrete. Once they started, you got very quickly.
Really luxurious at that point.
22nd of March last year, a fraction over a year ago, Patrick doing his bricklaying. reception. That's the completed building. Copy vial, some of you will see, with the library, which is well worth a look.
Did you have any of those wonderful glass panels left over?
I recognise wardroom next door. And that when I flew in my helicopter the other day, Chief Executive's helicopter, that was the view just before landing. Interesting, one of the local newspapers said the BHS were out of their old offices into the new ones in 3 weeks, which I thought was going a bit. It was actually a year, almost to the day, from the time we moved down to the old building to the time we moved back. And for those of you who haven't already had a tour of the building, I hope you'll take the opportunity to do so at lunchtime or at the end of today's proceedings.